Buenas tardes, mis jóvenes. Buenas tardes. Soy señora Villanueva. Me llamo señora Villanueva. This is Español 1, Unidad 2B, al colegio. Colegio doesn't mean college, although it seems like it should. It's a false cognate. It actually means school. Usually it means a school that is the equivalent to a junior high school or a high school in the United States. All right, today in this screencast, I'm going to talk about the overview para Unidad 2B and give a little bit of insight into what we actually will be talking about in the next couple of weeks. Primero, por favor, primero escriban su nombre. Mi nombre es señora Villanueva. ¿Cómo te llamas? Escriban su nombre. Señora Villanueva. Segundo, por favor, segundo, escriban la fecha. Hoy es jueves 14 de enero. Hoy es jueves 14 de enero. Unidad 2B, la pregunta clave, mis metas, la gramática y el vocabulario. In this screencast, we are just going to go over the first three things very briefly. All right. So, la pregunta clave, the essential question or the key question for this particular unit. How does education promote understanding of different cultures? What I'm asking is, or what we're going to be talking about is, in what ways can we learn about each other, about our values, and about what's important by looking at education and understanding what it means to become educated? Right? Mis metas, those are your goals for the unit. What should you be able to do by the end of this? Well, you should be able to discuss school schedules. We started that before the winter break, and we're going to continue that now that we're learning some of the titles of classes, especially the ones on our campus. In anticipation of moving to hybrid, we're going to, again, start focusing on actual physical classroom objects. We haven't had much need for those. We're not using pencils. We're not using books. We're not using desks. So now we're going to start focusing on that. We are also going to start talking about clothing, different types of clothing. Along those lines, we're going to be talking about how do people speak on a telephone in Spanish? Is it the same as in English? Do we answer the same way? We're going to take a tangent break and we're going to look at texting and texting in Spanish. Some of us in our chats and on our texting, we use things like NVM for never mind. Well, you can't use that when you're a Spanish speaker because never mind isn't a word you use. So what shortcuts and shorthand do Spanish speakers use for the things that we use? We're going to continue learning about AR verbs, and we're going to be focusing specifically on these 5. Estudiar, hablar, llevar, necesitar, terminar. We've used those to some degree, but now we're going to actually explicitly talk about those and teach those. All right. We're going to talk about school in the Spanish-speaking world. What's the same as in America and what's different? We're going to look at educational technology. We've done some of this already because we've been using these computers and these programs. We're going to add some vocabulary to that. We're going to do a review of numbers because we're going to talk about contact information. What is your email address? What is your phone number? What is your address? And I don't mean literally, but we're going to be using examples of how these numbers interact. We're also going to be talking about numbers in terms of things like number of students, how many pairs of socks do you own, things like that. Silly, fun things. We've been using tener and tener que. We're going to expand on that a little bit. We're going to talk about what people have and what they have to do using tener and tener que. And finally, if there's time, we are going to read and discuss a poem by a woman named Hina Valdez. And the interesting thing is that she was actually one of my college professors when I went to UC Davis. She was a visiting professor, and I actually got to study this poem with her when I was in her class. So it was a fascinating thing to see a poet's perspective on something. All right, we are now, so in terms of grammar, we're going to be expanding a little bit on that. We talked about nouns, the masculine and feminine. We talked about plurals. Now we're going to talk about when we describe those nouns, what do we have to do? All right, talked about verbs. So this is just an example of how you conjugate an AR verb. All right, I'll get more into that later. And this is the conjugation box for the irregular verb tener. Irregular means it doesn't follow the rules. So we're going to take a look at that. And that is the overview of where we're headed. The second page has all of the vocabulary that we're going to be dealing with. It's all in Spanish. Notice there's no English. That's because I'm going to be teaching it to you. We're going to be learning it together as we proceed. Right? Muy bien, muchas gracias para escuchar. This is the end of this video, or the screencast, sorry. And I will start going over the vocabulary pictures in the next screencast. Hasta luego y que pasen buen día.